lots of water. In Atlanta, more than 160 million gallons of water and waste are discharged to the city sewer system every single day. Wastewater from metropolitan Atlanta's 1.2 million residents, industrial and commercial wastewater, and stormwater from 19 square miles of street runoff, along with the debris that accompanies it. But before one single drop of this 160 million gallons of wastewater arrives at its final destination, the Chattahoochee River, it's collected and transmitted to one of the city's 4 water reclamation centers, where it's cleaned of its debris and biological contaminants. The City of Atlanta is thoroughly committed to providing its citizens with a clean, healthy, and beautiful physical environment. However, as important as environmental protection and public safety are, a key priority of the city is the safety of those valued employees actually engaged in the water reclamation process, and the safety of any visitors to these reclamation centers. Upon entry to a facility, all visitors, vendors, and contractors must sign in at the administration building. Also, while on the premises, visitors must be escorted by Plant Water Reclamation Center personnel. In order to make your work environment or your visit a safe and healthy one, the City of Atlanta has created this video to provide you with some basic information on the reclamation process and the potential safety hazards you may encounter. Although there are some minor differences in the reclamation process, the operation begins at the pump station, where any large objects that might clog the plant inlet pipes or damage the pumps are trapped by an initial grate. From there, the wastewater is pumped to an area known as the headworks, or preliminary treatment. Here at the bar screens, mechanical rakes remove the coarse debris. Next, sand and gravel are removed by the grit collectors, with floatable fine debris separated out by the drum screens. From the headworks, the wastewater, now minus debris and grit, is transferred to the primary clarifiers. Here, solids that are in suspension settle out as sludge, and petroleum products or fatty substances float to the surface as scum. Both are removed and pumped to the anaerobic digesters. The remaining wastewater continues on to the biological treatment area, where nature begins its cleaning process. 3 of the reclamation centers use an activated sludge process, where naturally occurring bacteria consume the organic waste compounds and create water, carbon dioxide, and nitrogen gases. The Entrenchment Creek facility uses a slightly different method called a trickling filter, where instead of tanks, the wastewater is sprayed over rocks that are coated with naturally occurring bacteria. Regardless of method used, organic matter is removed at this point in the process. From the biological treatment area, the wastewater flows to the secondary clarifiers. At this stage of the process, bacteria-laden sludge is separated from the water and pumped either back to the biological treatment area or discharged to the thickening centrifuge. The biologically clean water leaves the secondary clarifier and is put through a sand filtering operation to remove any fine particles that still might remain in suspension before flowing to the ultraviolet disinfection channels. As the stream of water passes through banks of ultraviolet lamps, any of the naturally occurring bacteria that may have made it through the secondary clarification or filtering processes, as well as any other undesirable bacteria, viruses, or microscopic organisms, are killed by the high-intensity UV rays. Although now thoroughly cleaned and disinfected, during the reclamation process, the water has been depleted of most of its dissolved oxygen. So as not to adversely affect the creatures that make their home in the Chattahoochee, prior to being released into the river, oxygen is reintroduced into the water by either an air diffusion process or by cascading it down small waterfalls. The water discharged from Atlanta's reclamation centers is cleaner than the river water itself, an accomplishment of which the water reclamation centers are justifiably proud, since the Chattahoochee River is the drinking water source for most of Metro Atlanta, as well as other communities downstream. As for the material that's extracted during the reclamation process, debris from the bar screens, grit collectors, and drum screens in the headworks is currently being sent to the landfill. Watery sludge from the secondary clarifiers is pumped to the thickening centrifuges, where some of the water is removed from it. This thickening process is aided by the addition of polymers, chemicals that cause the sludge to coagulate. The extracted water is pumped back to the biological treatment area, and the thickened sludge is sent to the anaerobic digesters, where it's joined by the sludge and scum that was removed from the primary clarifiers. The sludge is heated, and the naturally occurring bacteria present reduce its volume, producing methane, carbon dioxide, and water in the process. The methane is collected and either burned in the digester's boilers or flared off to the atmosphere, while the reduced volume of sludge and water are pumped to the dewatering centrifuges. There, like the process at the thickening centrifuges, a polymer is added to dewater the sludge. The water extracted is pumped back to the primary clarifier to be reprocessed by the system, and the biosolid waste is sent to the incinerator to be burned. With the furnace temperatures upwards of 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, the biosolids are soon reduced to a fine ash. Because of the high temperatures involved in the incineration process, the ash at this point is free of any biological hazards. The City of Atlanta is conducting research on ways to beneficially reuse this material. Ecological responsibility does not end with properly handling the biosolids or reclaiming the water. So as to be good neighbors to the communities which they serve, Atlanta's water reclamation centers also deal responsibly with the odors that are a natural part of the process. Preliminary treatment and primary clarification are accomplished in closed buildings or tanks. The air containing the odors generated by these operations is then vacuumed off and pumped to the odor control area for cleansing. Here, the air is passed through a chemical rain shower and thoroughly deodorized before being released to the atmosphere. During this reclamation process of cleaning the water and the air and dealing with the biosolid byproducts of wastewater, certain health and safety hazards are present, as there are in any industrial setting. And as in most industries, the three primary safeguards against becoming a workplace accident statistic are awareness of your surroundings, common sense, and following the prescribed safety procedures. Foremost in the area of safety procedures for water reclamation employees is the proper use of personal protection equipment, better known as PPE. The City of Atlanta provides every employee with a work uniform, safety glasses, safety shoes, and if construction is in progress, a hard hat. However, it's the responsibility of each individual employee to use the safety gear that has been issued. In addition, some sections of the facilities require that additional PPE be worn. Those areas are clearly identified with either a personal protection key sign indicating the PPE required or an individual alert sign defining a specific hazard. Employees are responsible for complying with these alerts and taking the necessary precautions to protect themselves against the identified hazards. For visitors, it's important to dress appropriately when touring any industrial facility and to take simple precautions, such as wearing flat-soled, closed-toed shoes. In addition, because of the moving machinery, avoid loose clothing, secure long hair, and remove any dangling jewelry that might become caught on a piece of equipment. Using common sense can protect you against the majority of the hazards you might encounter. Also remember, although scarves and ties, other than the clip-on variety, may be fine in an office setting, they too should be removed prior to entering areas with moving machinery. And in the water reclamation process, moving machinery abounds. Be aware of your surroundings. Camshafts, plunger pumps and screws, belt drives, conveyors and cranes, rotating shafts, shaft couplings and gears, as well as the equipment they drive, all can result in pinching, struck by, or caught on accidents if proper caution is not exercised. The machinery in the water reclamation centers, for the most part, is electronically powered, some of it using high voltage. Wherever electricity is present, there is always the potential for danger. However, again, some simple precautions will minimize the risk. The use of dielectric mats in front of motor control panels can decrease the chances of harm in case of a short circuit. And of course, following proper lockout and tagout procedures are required whenever working on electrical or any other machinery. To further minimize the risk of electrical shock hazard, read all warnings posted on electrical equipment. Use appropriate safety PPE. Use only double insulated electrical tools. Work in the company of an associate. And when working on live electrical equipment, avoid moist or damp conditions. Various chemicals are routinely unloaded and stored at the water reclamation centers for use in a number of process stages. Unless your job requires you to be there and you have the proper PPE, stay clear of these areas. Should you encounter any leaks anywhere throughout the facilities, immediately report them to your supervisor. Material Safety Data Sheets, or MSDSs, should be reviewed before handling any chemicals. Copies of these data sheets are to be obtained from your site safety officer. And all chemicals, no matter the size of the container, must be labeled. Any unlabeled containers should be reported to your supervisor. In the event of a chemical spill or leak, or of any other fluids for that matter, spill control stations are appropriately located throughout the facilities, as are emergency showers and eye washes. However, before attempting to clean up a spill, review the MSDS for that particular chemical. The wastewater itself, on its way through the reclamation centers, poses a variety of potential hazards. The most obvious, of course, is falling in during one of the various stages of the process. Stay behind the safety railings and barriers at all times. However, if your work should require you to cross these barriers, take the necessary safety harnessing precautions. And remember, the abundance of bubbles in aerated water used in the biological treatment and post-aeration tanks make you less buoyant than in ordinary water and increase your risk of drowning. Again, be aware of your surroundings. Watch for potential tripping or slipping hazards when working around the tanks and channels. And make sure any floor grading is securely in place. Although life rings are present throughout the facilities, avoidance of an accident is much more preferable to a rescue operation. Also remember that this is, after all, wastewater that could contain microorganisms carrying a variety of diseases. In addition to wearing the prescribed PPE when working around untreated raw sewage and sludge, all wastewater personnel should take advantage of the free immunizations offered by the City of Atlanta and get vaccinated against potential hazards, including hepatitis A, hepatitis B, diphtheria, and tetanus. The importance of good hygiene cannot be overstressed. Never eat or drink except in the proper areas. Be aware of which faucets contain potable and non-potable water. And always wash your hands and face after coming in contact with any surfaces in the plant. In addition to raw sewage, gasoline and petroleum products can also accompany the wastewater that arrives for treatment. And a byproduct of the anaerobic digester biological treatment process is the production of methane gas. Despite the exhaust systems, in the confined spaces of enclosed buildings or covered tanks, these gases could build up and become an explosion hazard. Therefore, smoking is only permitted in specific restricted locations, and open flames of any type are not allowed in the vicinity of certain designated areas. Built-up gases not only pose a potential explosion hazard, but can be a potential toxic risk as well. In some enclosed areas, electronic detectors continually check for the presence of hazardous gases and sound an alarm if the buildup level becomes dangerous. Before entering any of these areas, always check first to see if the hazardous gas safe lights are on and that the exhaust fans are running. In other areas where there are risks of toxic gases, confined space permits are required for entry, and strict safety procedures regarding work in confined spaces must be followed. Because of the continual presence of water, there is always the potential for slipping hazards. These are not just confined to regular walkways. Even safety grates can become slippery when wet. And standing water in buildings where polymers are being used can get quite slick and dangerous. Like with most potential hazards though, you can reduce your risk of slipping and tripping merely by being aware of your surroundings and exercising proper precautions. A common-sense approach also applies to those pieces of equipment throughout the plants which generate heat. In addition to the obvious hot surface hazards, like incinerator furnaces and digester boilers, compressed air and air blower pipes also heat up and should not be touched. And the UV light fixtures used in the disinfection process need to cool down for at least 30 minutes before being worked on. Special care also needs to be taken when working around these fixtures because they generate the same intense ultraviolet radiation as does the sun. If left on out of the water, they can create a sunburn on exposed skin and cause eye damage if looked at directly. Furthermore, the glass lamps are fragile and can easily be broken if handled improperly, resulting in abrasions and lacerations. This video serves to highlight some of the more common potential hazards you may encounter as part of your normal workday at or visit to one of Atlanta's water reclamation centers. Additional, more detailed information can be provided by the site safety officer and is also contained in the Health and Safety Manual. Although, as in any industrial setting, the potential hazards are many, being aware of your surroundings, using common sense, and following the prescribed safety procedures can go a long way toward preventing you from becoming a workplace accident statistic. From wastewater influent to clean water effluent, the City of Atlanta is thoroughly committed to safeguarding its employees, the public, and the environment.